Welcome to Chapter 12, Leadership, Power, and Influence. Sounds very ominous, right? Power and influence. Okay, let's jump in. So for this chapter, you should learn about how to use power in politics to help accomplish important organizational goals, practice aspects of charismatic leadership by persuading or pursuing a vision or an idea that you care deeply about and want to share with others, and apply the concepts that distinguish transformational from transactional leadership. In addition, you're going to learn about using coalition leadership to build alliances that can help you achieve important goals of the organization. Call upon characteristics of Machiavellian style leadership when tough actions are needed to benefit the organization in difficult times. Explain the difference between soft power and hard power, and identify specific types of power in organizations. And finally, you're going to be required to describe structural, human resource, political, and symbolic frames of reference to identify your dominant leadership frame, and know how to increase power through political activity and use the influence tactics of appealing to a vision, rational persuasion, friendliness, reciprocity, developing allies, and direct persuasion. Let's jump in. Okay, so kinds of influential leaders. So in this chapter, we're going to talk about 4: transformational leaders, transactional leaders, charismatic leaders, and coalition leaders. So transformational and transactional leadership. So transformational leadership, leaders are characterized by their ability to bring about significant change in followers and the organization. Transactional leaders, on the other hand, there's a transaction or exchange process between leaders and followers. And that's a distinctive difference, right? Transformational leader has the ability to bring change with the followers in the organization, and a transactional leader must exchange something. There must be a transaction in order to achieve what they want to achieve, to convince the people who are in the organization to follow their vision and their leadership. Transactional leadership recognizes followers' needs and desires, of course, clarifies how the needs and desires will be satisfied in exchange for meeting specific objectives or performance duties, focuses on present and maintains stability within an organization, and is good at traditional management functions. Transactional leadership. Transformational leadership, on the other hand, paints a grand vision of a desired future and communicates in a way that makes the pain of change worth the effort, the inspiration, the motivation that we've talked about in previous chapters. This is an important attribute of a transformational leader. They inspire followers to go beyond their self-interests for the good of the group, for the good of the organization. They evaluate the concerns of the followers from the lower level physical needs to the higher level psychological needs. We talked about this in previous chapters, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And they develop followers into leaders, right? They transformational leader is able to transform people from one state to another, create leaders within the organizations, create managers within the organizations, convince people to go beyond just the basics and be able to achieve extraordinary things. These are the type of leaders that people follow from one organization to another because they are so great to work with. Charismatic leaders. Leaders who have the ability to inspire and motivate people to do more than they normally do, despite obstacles and personal sacrifice, right? Everyone wants to work for a charismatic leader. Charismatic leaders instill both awe and submission in followers, can lift the entire organization's level of energy and performance. Charismatic leaders charisma can't be learned, but aspects can be used by anyone. It comes from activities that you have a passion for and engages emotion in the everyday work life. Distinguishing characteristics of a charismatic and non-charismatic leader. So you can see in the left-hand column, the non-charismatic leader. In the right-hand column, the charismatic leader. You want to be in the right-hand column, right? The non-charismatic leader shares perspective, makes leader likable, tries to maintain status quo, limited goals, weak articulation of goals, primarily authoritative position, right? What they're trying to do is they tell people to do it, not because they want to do it, but because they have to do it. And if they don't, there's going to be a punishment, right? Maybe you're going to get a bad shift. Maybe you're going to be docked pay. On the other hand, a charismatic leader shares perspective and idealized vision, makes the leader likable, honorable, a hero, creates an atmosphere of change. They are strong, inspirational. They use unconventional means to transcend people into a different level. And they use personal power based on expertise and respect and admiration for leadership, right? These are all traits of a charismatic leader. Coalition leadership. So leadership that involves developing allies and building a coalition of people who support the leader's goals and can help influence others to implement the leader's decisions and achieve goals. This aligns well with us. What we talked about in previous chapters was the in-group and the out-group, right? The coalition leader tries to develop an in-group, a group of people who support him or her, and that group is big enough to influence the rest of the organization to do what the leader requires, to follow the vision, to follow the mission. So coalition leaders observe and understand the patterns of interaction and influence in the organization, develops connections with a broad network of people. Leaders adapt their behavior and approach to diverse people and situations. And failing to build a coalition can allow conflict and derail the leadership's decision, right? So you need to form coalitions within the organization if you want people to step up and do what is required. Steps for effective coalition leadership. Do a lot of interviews. Yeah, you got to figure out where people are coming from, what they're thinking, what they're saying to each other. Visit customers and other stakeholders, develop a map of stakeholder buy-in, break down barriers, and promote cross-silo cooperation, meaning different departments, different parts of the organization are going to work together, even though they may be in their own silos. Mapping stakeholder buy-in. So this is a diagram of the typical breakdown of stakeholders and their buy-in, right? Where you have 60% of them are just kind of observers. They're kind of going to take the sidelines. 10% are advocates. They're always going to champion change. 10% are supporters. They will support you, but they're not going to necessarily advocate. And then 20% are resistant. So it's all about swaying that 60%, the observers, to not be resistors, but at least be partners. And hopefully advocates if you're charismatic enough. Okay, Machiavellian style leadership. So Machiavellian leadership is it's a top-down type of leadership. Leadership is willing to use all and any means necessary to persuade or preserve the status quo, to protect the well-being of the organization. They're willing to hurt people's feelings. They're willing to let go people. They're willing to do whatever they need to do to preserve and protect the well-being of the organization. Leaders use a bare-knuckle strategy to attain clout needed to accomplish great things. I've never heard that term, and I think it's absolutely hilarious. Bare-knuckle strategies, right? Very aggressive, top-down type strategies. Either it is my way or it is the highway. That's the best way to define Machiavellian style leadership. What are the characteristics of Machiavellian style leadership? Great question. Always on guard for risks and threat to their power. They don't mind being feared. They use deception if necessary. This doesn't sound great. Use rewards and punishments to shape behavior. I can think of a couple world leaders that are definitely Machiavellian leaders. Okay, what is power? Okay, power is the potential ability of one person to influence other people to bring about desired outcome. Hard power is power that stems largely from a person's position or authority, right? I am your boss, do what I tell you. Soft power, on the other hand, is power that is based on personal characteristics and interpersonal relationships. So although I may not be your boss, I am very likable and charismatic. So wouldn't it be great if you did what I told you, right? One is you have to, and the other one is please will you. What is influence? The effect of a person's actions have on attitudes, values, beliefs, and actions of others. How much influence does the leader really have? 5 types of power. So hard power, as we talked about, is legitimate power based on a position. They're able to reward, they're able to punish, and based on the leader's ability to punish or to recommend punish, people follow the orders just to avoid being punished. On the other hand, we have soft power, and that is power based on maybe a leader's knowledge or their skills or the trust and respect they've built within the organization, based on the leader's personal characteristics, because people admire them, they respect them, they want to be around them, and they want to be part of the in-group. Soft power versus hard power. Responses to use of power. Okay, so there's a couple ways that people can react. The first one is compliance, following the directions of the person with power, regardless of how much agreement there is with that person's direction, right? So even if they don't agree, they might follow it anyways, they comply. Resistance, and that's an act of disobeying orders or deliberately avoiding following instructions. And then the last one is commitment, adopting the leader's viewpoint and enthusiastically carrying out the instructions. Okay, so here we are again talking about soft power versus hard power. So you can see on the left-hand side, we have a position of power or hard power, right? And they use an appropriate amount of their power, they get compliance. But if they overstep it and they start to be a little bit more Machiavellian in the way that they lead people, it's going to result in resistance, because nobody likes a bully. No one likes to be told what to do and disrespected and not really appreciated. And then on the other side, we have the personal power, the soft power, and that often leads to a commitment because you're likable. People know that you're there for them, that you respect them, that you treat them with integrity, right? Soft versus hard power. And listen, sometimes you need to use hard power. Sometimes there's not enough time to make sure that everyone feels good about the decisions you're making. I can see in times that are difficult, in an emergency, in certain organizations, they don't have time for soft power, right? Military has to be hard power. Let's not talk about people's feelings. Let's just get it done because there are lives at stake, right? I think the medical field is this way too. A doctor tells someone to do something, they need to do it. Okay, politics. Activities to acquire, develop, and use power and other resources to obtain desired future outcomes when there is uncertainty or disagreement about choices. That's really good, eh? So when there are disagreements or uncertainty about choices, you need to have some sort of political power, right? The ability to maybe obtain future outcomes when things are uncertain. Frame, a perspective from which a leader's view of the world influences how the leader interacts with followers, makes decisions, and exercises power. Based on this leader's education, on their cultural background, and maybe on the way that bosses and leaders have treated them, they're going to have developed a frame, a certain way of thinking, a certain way of making decisions and exercising their power. 4 leader frames of reference. We have the structural frame, we have the human resource frame, we have the political frame, and we have the symbolic frame. In the structural frame, the mindset, they see organizations as a machine, economies and plans, right? They're all about goals and systems and efficiency, structure, a lot of structure. Human resources, they see the organization as family, as belonging. People and relationships are most important. Political, they see the organization as a jungle, power schemes. It's all about resources, allocation, negotiation, and coalition building. And then we have the symbolic leadership frame, and they see the organization as a theater, spiritual meaning and dreams. They emphasize vision and cultures and values, inspiration. Depending on the leader in the organization, you may find yourself in one of these four frames, or sometimes maybe a little bit of both. 6 principles of asserting leadership influence. So if you see yourself in the middle and you want to assert influence as the leader, there are 6 primary ways to do it. You appeal to a vision or a mission or a higher purpose. You use rational persuasion. You help people to like you. You rely on the rule of reciprocity. I will do something for you if you do something for me. You develop allies, or maybe you simply just ask for what you want. Personalized leadership versus socialized leadership. In personalized leadership, they exercise power for their own self-centered needs, self-aggregating, non-egalitarian, and exploitive. Doesn't sound great. On the other hand, socialized leadership exercise power to benefit others and the organization. They empower. It's egalitarian and very supportive. And finally, guidelines for ethical action. If the action is consistent with the organizational goals rather than being motivated purely by self-interest, does the action respect the right of individuals? Does the action meet the standards of fairness and equity? And would you wish others to behave in the same way if the action affected you? This is the ethical code. These are the ethical guidelines to making decisions. If you can answer affirmative to every one of these questions, that is a good decision. So that was a very quick overview of chapter 12, a short chapter here. Not a lot. A couple definitions, a few diagrams, but pretty straightforward. Having any questions, you know what to do. You know where to find me. Good luck with the quiz. Have yourself a great rest of the day.